Greetings, everyone. This is Fahad Malaikah coming to you from a very wet and rainy Washington, D.C. with the 5th edition of the NISA Alumni virtual interview series. Today, we are honored to be joined by one of our valued alumni from Yemen, Minister Wael Al Hamdani, who is also based in Washington. Minister Wael is a third-generation diplomat and has been a member of Yemen's Forest Service since 2006. He has served in multiple assignments at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Sana'a and at Yemen's permanent mission to the United Nations. He is currently based in Washington, where he serves as the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of Yemen to the United States. Minister, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We would like to talk about some of the lessons learned from your distinguished career as a diplomat, and particularly some of the lessons learned from your time in Washington. I am certain that any young or aspiring diplomat watching this will be paying close attention and will greatly benefit from your advice. So that brings me to my first question. Could you please tell us more about how your career brought you to this point where you are now the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of Yemen to the United States? Over to you.
It's a great opportunity to be talking to you and to be talking in the capacity of being among the distinguished NISA alumni. The experience, I think it is. It doesn't have really a relation to being a third generation of diplomats. It wasn't really my wish, to be honest. I studied economics as a major and finance and investment as a minor. I thought I would go back to Yemen and serve somewhere else, but as you know, we don't have a stock exchange in Yemen. We didn't have the real economy that I could, apply what I learned. But in the foreign ministry, there has been debate about the economic department and the relationship between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Planning, and a lot of aid was coming to Yemen. So I thought this is somewhere where I can contribute. And there was a coincidence also that they were looking for translators at the time, so it was the easy access for me. There was an ad looking for 2 translators. They only found me, actually. They never found the second one, but I still do translating. I even did translating with His Excellency the President in the past 2 years I spent in Riyadh. But of course, still I stick to my original capacity as a diplomat. I think the very good exposure for me was working with the former foreign minister in Sana'a for 4 years as a special assistant. You learn a lot about the craft. You travel a lot. You attend. I attended every session of United Nations General Assembly. You learn a lot, and of course you have to be ready to seek knowledge and to go the extra mile. That's in every, you can be a regular journalist or a regular doctor, unless you want to learn more, even sacrifice some of your social life, personal life. And this is how you get anywhere, I believe. So the experience and the effort, and maybe also the situation that our country went through. So it's been complicated in working in a country where there is an armed conflict, a lot of political parties, a lot of I would say interference from outside Yemen, and also help from friends like the US and the GCC. So you actually learn more than any regular diplomat in regular circumstances.
Thank you, Minister. So as an experienced diplomat, what general tips and advice would you give to young diplomats just getting started in their careers? Over to you.
If you spoke to a diplomat 20 years ago in Sana'a or Egypt or any foreign ministry, they would tell you foreign languages is the key. They would tell you computer skills. But now it's a necessity for living or doing any job. So the other thing is educating yourself and improving, your general knowledge on different issues, and mainly this issue. Global affairs, I think, is very important, even if you're, doing any other kind of job. Because if you're in a think tank, or you're a journalist, or you're a diplomat, or a politician, or a businessman, global affairs are very important. You can see now business people, corporates, they're following up what's going on with Iran and Yemen, what's going on with in China and the South China Sea, where a lot of shipping is going on. The major issue of the Yemeni conflict is the worries about what's going on in the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, which is the shipping through the Red Sea. So it's all interlinked. I think educate yourself, and even for the United States, for example, this is something we can talk about later. But still, a major part of the U.S. might and how to preserve its own interests is to be involved globally through its embassies and through its different channels. You cannot really just stay in the continent and say, I'm going to observe things from a distance. This is not how the great US and the leader US should function at this critical time.
Thank you. So speaking about the United States, what are some of the challenges you have faced in Washington, D.C., and what advice would you give to any diplomats coming to Washington for the first time? Over to you.
Everybody has been welcoming in DC, whether it's from the State Department or the public servants or the other people interested in Yemen. Even when you meet journalists or researchers who don't do Yemen, don't focus on Yemen, if you have the will to contact people and to knock doors, this will always pay off. So don't just say, this is my business card, and if people don't react, then you just go back to your office. In the US, no, you don't do that. It's since we were kids, we've seen the pattern of American salespeople when they knock doors and call over the phone, and this is how you get to people. And it's not shameful, actually. The struggle to achieve your target is not shameful, especially for a diplomat who is serving a noble cause. He's serving a whole nation, talking in the name of a whole nation. The challenges come in different ways. For example, some of the think tanks that cover Yemen, there are people who have lived in Yemen, diplomats who served there, people who visited the country. It's much easier to deal with them. Others are interested, for example, in GCC countries. And Yemen is just the corner that they cover because of the war. So sometimes you find yourself obliged to educate these people in a proper manner. If somebody is a professor or somebody's a specialist that's been working in the region for 30 years, you should be also careful on how you pass your message. For example, I'll tell you this. I said this also in the panel lately with Dr. Todd. You should keep friends on both sides of the aisle, as they say. You should have both parties. Everybody in this should be your friend. You're not, you're not representing your country here as an American. You are a guest, and you should maintain very good relations with everybody in this capital, and it's good for your country's interest long term. You should have, you will contact the people in office now, but you should have friends. I'm repeating this a lot, but it is really important. And don't get involved in domestic politics. You should be well aware of domestic politics. And of course, many countries could relate to this because they are saying, oh, the Americans are interfering in our issues, but then they don't hesitate to do this here. I think we should maintain diplomacy and the principles of diplomacy and how nations address each other. There will always be channels of business, channels of friendship. Those are fine. But don't get involved in the domestic conflict and domestic issues with the United States. First of all, because you're a guest. Secondly, we don't want to get it worse. The US is a large country. It has very big influence on the globe. And when it does well, to be honest, in most cases, everybody does well. And when it's not doing well, it reflects on everyone. So a good, healthy, strong US is also a very important thing for us as smaller nations. I will go into details. For example, when you talk about, for example, our friends in the Democratic Party, they have now a majority in the House. It's been wrong. It's been difficult, but we've managed to pass the message, which is the war in our country. The solution for the war is just like a symptom. We need to deal with the real cause and the real disease. If we just stop the military operations immediately, what does that mean? That means that the militias win, and the government will remain outside the country, and the coup d'etat will be a pattern for the whole region, for all countries everywhere. So stopping the war is, yes, a major target, but how do you reach it? By dealing with the causes of the disease, not just the symptoms. While in the government, the current administration, they have a clear vision of that, and they know that, and we share most of the visions on this. But it is in our interest as Yemen that everybody in DC who really matters has the same perspective.
Thank you, Minister. So speaking of diplomacy more generally, what do you think is the role of diplomacy in an era where global multilateralism is arguably in crisis? Over to you.
I believe there were a lot of ideas, noble, great ideas created by man over history, like democracy, like human rights, the principles of the French Revolution. And then a lot of good people thought about the United Nations and forming the United Nations. It is a very important organization. We cannot handle business as it should without this organization. Everybody's equal in the General Assembly. All votes are equal. Of course, the Security Council is a different issue. It's about security. That's why it had its own rules. Of course, smaller nations, we've been talking about more representation and reform of the Security Council, because there are bigger powers that also should be represented, but this will come by time. And the multilateral system is very important. It is the major platform for most states in the world, where they can present their case, where they can talk. Dialogue is the major issue. But then sometimes it comes with generalizations, and sometimes it comes with agendas of bigger countries or donors that give donations through the US. But sometimes it doesn't take into consideration the special situation of each country. It's when it comes to some gender issues, some religion issues. Nobody would argue with the right of expression or the democracy of having accountability for governments, proper monitoring for funds. That we all agree to. Although some of these countries that don't have a proper democracy or have corruption try to avoid that, but it comes on time and it's very clear. Yet there are other things that are sometimes being imposed. I faced this when I was working in 2 years in New York. But there are different platforms. You have the Arabic group, the Arab League members. You have the Islamic Cooperation Organization. They're not the most effective in the United Nations, but when they combine together and they talk and they make a statement, people listen. And the other issue is it's something that we're facing now in my country. I wouldn't doubt the good intentions of the UN organization working in Yemen. Actually, without the UN organizations working in Yemen, providing relief and aid now, hundreds of thousands of Yemenis would have perished, died, literally. So we are grateful. The major organizations who work in Yemen now are UN and the King Salman Center for Relief. These, to be honest, are lifesavers in my country. But when it comes to the UN, it's an issue that we discussed when I was in Riyadh 3 years ago. We discussed with US officials here. It's that the UN doesn't really make clear statements on who's been sabotaging, the delivery of aid in Yemen, and who's been stealing, sadly, to use this term, stealing aid and selling it in the black market, and not allowing it to reach those who deserve it. The UN have been saying they have a very solid argument, which is, if we say that, then the militias will not allow us to reach the people, and people are dying. But then, if this is a tactic, I believe so, but it cannot be a strategy, because long term, the aid is not reaching the people. It's being sold in the black market to those who can afford it, and people are still dying. So I think, but we have only one good example, which was the World Food Program, Mr. Baisley, and he was supported by Mrs. Grande, who's still now in Sana'a, but she's moving to the US Peace Institute. Those are good examples of brave people who have been very patient, and then they were watching the suffering of the people, so they were outspoken. And the common thing between them is that they're both also, American individuals.
Thank you, Minister. So just switching gears a little bit, what does it mean for you to be an alumnus of the NISA Center? And how have the experiences and lessons learned from your time at the NISA Center carried over into your current position? Over to you.
Actually, I never knew that I would be posted in the embassy in Washington, because the first time I participated here, it was 2013. I was still working in New York. But to be honest, although it's been 7 years, most of the knowledge that I gained at that time, I really invested and utilized when I worked here in DC. The program that was done for more than 40 Yemeni officials at that time. We went to to Philadelphia, where the Constitution was drafted. We went to Congress. We met with Congress people, men and women. It was a very rich program, and sadly, it did not continue because of the war. And there were also sessions of training, and Professor Dedrosh and others came to Sana'a. It was really dynamic, but war is no joke, and war is a terrible issue, and it stops beautiful things like these. Anyway, when I talk to other colleagues, of course, you sense pride that they've been trained with NISA. NISA is also associated with the National Defense University, and the kind of professors and experts there are distinguished. Even the translators, to be honest, 2013 there were translators, because not everybody that came from Sana'a spoke English, and the translators were high caliber. So everything was impressive, to be honest. The best way for us as alumni, because now we cannot meet because either we're in different embassies or in different positions, or sadly because of the war some of our colleagues left the State Department. The best platform for us, or the place for us to meet, was NISA. So I hope something can be organized for the alumni, now maybe virtual or later on, to choose some of those who've been training, regardless of where they are now. I think even if some of them have left the Foreign Service and are working somewhere else or in organizations, it could be like a tracking program, to see where the alumni went and how the war affected Yemen, and what can we do to, if we're not going to bring them back, how to, get others to have the same standard of training and have the same good feelings towards NISA. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Message heard loud and clear. I am taking notes, and I will be sure to convey that message back to the NISA leadership. So my final question is this. With the US presidential elections just a few days away, what advice would you have for the new administration, whether Biden 1 or Trump 2, regarding Yemen? Over to you.
First of all, we learned the lesson earlier, because we're just an emerging democracy. And we thought that, okay, we had a parliament, we had elections, so we're on the right track. Democracy needs to be maintained. And I'm not talking about the US or Yemen. It is a living, creature that needs to be, nourished and maintained. And the American democracy is sacred for all those who believe in democracy in the world. It's fun to watch, it's fun to learn from it, but the results are not always fun, because it's serious. It's about livelihood. It's about the strongest army in the world. So what we've been doing, for example, in the embassy, we had a meeting actually, and with our ambassador, and he told us we should follow it closely. You should know what's going on in this country. But of course, when you discuss this with friends, American friends, whether they're officials or not, you don't share your personal views. Actually, it's out of respect to the US and out of respect to the democratic process. But the advice that we have, or the request that we have to anyone that wins, is maintain the same solid position towards my country. Which is restoring the state and getting rid of the coup and stopping the Iranian regime from messing with Yemen and the region. Some people would say, why is Saudi interfering? We asked Saudi to interfere. We asked the coalition to interfere. Our president did that. And the Saudis actually interfered or came to help because Iran is messing. Iran is causing damage. If Iranians were not messing with our country, the Saudis would have just, been confined to the regular, they would give us like in development aid, bilateral relations. like it has been for more than 60 years. But it became a matter of self-defense for them too. The other thing is the roots of the battle, like I mentioned, the roots of the war. I hope that the team that will be with the president that will win the election will study more the cause. It's not only a Shia Sunnah thing. It's a new thing that's being imposed on us. In Yemen, we've been living together. You know, people marry from each other. You can never find a mosque which is for Sunnah and another for Shia. We share the same mosque, schools, you know, marriages. But I'm sadly thinking that some people, I don't know whether they're intellectuals or psychos, are thinking that the messing with this file in the region would lead into better control or better understanding. I don't know. I think messing with religion, messing with people's beliefs is satanic and it's terrible and should take its natural course, not to be interfered.
Minister, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your candid insights, and we know that all of the up-and-coming diplomats who are watching this will find your wisdom and experiences of great interest. We are honored to count you among our alumni ranks, and we hope to be able to call upon you again in the future. To everyone watching from home, we wish you happiness, safety, good health, and a happy Halloween. Thank you so much, and take care until next time. Bye-bye.